All right. Some questions about food allergies coming in. There was one about, some people just basically trying to figure out how to replicate items. So, alternative flours, how to cook without dairy. So, in previous conversations, we were talking about active ingredients versus flavor ingredients, right? So, is your ingredient that you're removing, is it actively doing something, or is it just there for flavor? So, in the best way to tackle something like that is to understand the base recipe. If you want to be a really good gluten-free bread baker, you have to first understand how to bake traditional bread, or at least understand the science behind gluten and gluten structure and how that gluten structure affects your overall dough. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to replicate something that doesn't exist, right? You're trying to do a gluten-free bread with like coconut flour, almond flour, whatever it is. So you're trying to replicate gluten structure. But if you don't understand what gluten structure actually is, then you have a hard time replicating it. So what you want to do is you want to actually study whatever that base is. If you're trying to do like dairy-free desserts, you need to understand what is the science behind cream in a dessert? What actually makes that cream whip? What makes it stable? And then once you understand those components, then you can start swapping out different components and testing and seeing what works. The good news is the world is becoming a smaller and smaller place with all these different online communities. And if you're a dairy-free cook, if you're a gluten-free cook, there's a community out there that has what you're looking for. Now, unfortunately, this I hope this doesn't offend my gluten-free and dairy-free friends, and if it does, then you're just being too sensitive. But when you cook with dietary restrictions in mind, the flavor and the outcome of your food is almost always secondary, right? You're just kind of willing to accept the fact that your bread's never going to be as good again because you can't use gluten, right? But when you develop skills, when you develop universal skills as a chef that we talk about constantly on this podcast, like flavor structure and technique and execution, and then you bring that to a diet-restricted cooking approach, you're going to have the best of both worlds. So if you understand flavor, so for example, right? Say you're completely vegan and you want to learn how to cook vegan foods. If you're not watching how guys barbecue meats, how different chefs will marinate their meats and char them and put them on the grill, then you're never fully going to understand how to replicate that flavor that the people that you're serving are missing, right? Because you might just be stuck in this vegan echo chamber, right? And if all you ever do is barbecue and grill meats, and all you're ever looking at is a barbecue and grilled meat videos, you're not looking at other videos and diversifying the information that's coming in, then you're always going to be kind of stuck in that rut, and you don't know what you don't know. Okay, so for all the dietary stuff, step one, go and find a good community that is familiar with solving these problems. And then step two, when you're trying to nail a specific recipe, research that recipe, understand what the active ingredients are versus the actual just flavor components, right? So ingredients that only add flavor. So for example, if something like brioche, right? You're making brioche, the butter in the brioche is an active flavor, but it's also an active ingredient. So it's a flavor and active ingredient because the fat in the butter is what helps to keep that brioche soft. But is that your only option as a fat? Can you find other dairy-free fats? Yeah, of course you can. So go and find a dairy-free fat. However, the oil, which is liquid at room temperature, is going to affect your dough differently than butter, which is semi-soft but not completely liquid and melted at room temperature. So the texture of your dough is going to be different. So now you got to start troubleshooting that. And the thing is you could do a whole podcast episode on just how to convert brioche to gluten-free, or how to convert this dessert to dairy-free, right? So what you need to do is you need to go and do the research behind a specific dessert and understand that there's not one silver bullet, right, that's going to solve all of your dairy-free problems, all of your gluten-free problems, all of your vegan problems. But you'll start to pick up these little tips and tricks along the way, and as you solve one dish, you move on to the next, you solve another dish, you move on to the next, and you start building a repertoire.